CNBC TV 18 Weekender.
Welcome back. We're in conversation with Rajeev Samant of Sula Vineyards. Rajeev, you were talking about, the drinking culture in India, how it's evolved. Tell us, from the time you started in the early 2000s to now, how has the landscape changed?
So the one thing that we've noticed in the last 16 years since we began operations is the increasing number of women who enjoy a glass of alcohol from time to time. When we started out, just as early, recent as 16 years ago, there were not that many women who would enjoy a glass of, even a social drink after work, for example. In fact, you didn't even have that number of women in the workforce. 16 years later, everything has changed completely. If you look at the IT industry, for example, you have a massive number of young, educated women, independent, who are out there, working side by side with the men and then going out for a social drink in the evening. And that's been the biggest change, I would say, in India's drinking habits in the last 16 years. So if you look at Sula as a brand, I would say more than 35% of our wine is consumed by women, which is a huge difference than something for, say, a whiskey brand.
Okay. Could you tell us more about this brand you're building? How is it an extension of your personality? What are you really trying to portray with the brand Sula? Is it the Indianness?
Are you saying that I'm like very popular with women, or?
I don't know. I'm not insinuating anything.
There's a lot of, there's a Californian background to it, being as I spent, 7 formative years in California. So there's that openness to it. This whole place that you see here is very unique in that way, that when I started, you were not allowed to enter wineries. It was banned to people who didn't work there, for example. And I said, what is this? Let's call everyone in, let them see exactly how we make wine, and let them drink it right here on the premise, and that's the way they're really going to know. So that's something that's really, that's an extension of me and my openness and my, that Californian ethic. At the same time, I've always tried to make this a very Indian product. But if you look at the label, it's, sort of a depiction of Surya,
the sun,
the Indian, sun god. In a way, right? I mean, we're not claiming that we have gods on the label or anything like that, but it's a very Indian label, that's for sure. And we were the first to say very proudly, made in India, produce of India on our label, which is something that the people before us were, hiding. So today, when you have this whole Make in India thing, I can proudly say that, we were way ahead of the curve. That this product, which goes onto the tables, dinner tables of affluent consumers all over the world, is one of the few things that they're going to see on their dinner table or in their homes that's going to say, Made in India.
You've seen this wine industry grow from, I think you're one of the pioneers, started it long back. Now, how is the domestic market for wines? How is it growing each year?
Well, the domestic market has been growing very fast. So it's growing in the high double digits every year since the last 15 years, since we've been around. Some years it's gone even above 20%. Right now it's growing at about 15 to 20% a year.
But has it picked up only in the recent past? How has the trend been?
No, I mean, since we started, I can say since probably 2003 or so. So over the last 13, 14 years, it's been growing nicely at a 15 to 20% CAGR, which is a very fast growth. And I see no reason why it will not continue to grow at least 15% a year for the next decade, given at the end of the day how small, how minuscule wine consumption is.
You're obviously one of the more dominant players in the market. What, for instance, is your current market share? What is the sales you're clocking in, the profits?
It's always a little bit difficult because it's not a sort of a market where data is so easily available, but we're somewhere between 55 and 60% of the domestic wine market today.
Wow, and what is your sales and profit figures, if you could tell us? You're not a listed entity, we have no...
Yeah, we're not listed, so generally we don't talk in that term, but I'll tell you that we will sell this year around 11 million bottles, which, and that's total has been growing at about 15% a year over the last 4 or 5 years, so it's getting bigger and bigger, and we have been strongly profitable since our second year of operations. So for 15 years we've been strongly profitable, and that's the way I put it. And at the same time, though, it's important that we should mention the fact that we have grown sustainably. So sustainability is a key value of ours, as well as we've been a tremendous boon for the local community. So if you just see this beautiful region just outside Nasik, and you see this village close by of Savarga, when we arrived right there was not a single person in formal employment. And it's a very disadvantaged area as well as a village. It's a more of an Adivasi area here.
Okay.
And I'm really happy to say that most of our employees here in this winery do come from, you know, an Adivasi family, and they had no way of employment before we got here. And today it's just, it's been a revolution.
How many people do you employ now?
We have close to 1,000 employees, permanent,
All over
temporary
India?
and contract. Yes, all over India.
I see.
And that's growing at about 10% a year, so it's quite a few. And that does not include the people working in the vineyards. So the vineyards are not owned by Sula, they're owned by individual farmers.
Yeah.
And you can say that there's at least 10,000 people working in the vineyards that produce grapes directly for Sula.
Your focus has always been on the Indian market. What proportion of your wines are you, selling overseas? Is there a plan to go bigger, make a bigger splash outside?
And so India continues to be our main focus. And I have a feeling that for the next decade at least, it's going to be that way. Because just look at the statistics, less than 1% of all alcoholic beverages consumed in India is wine. Less than 1%. If you take a market like the UK, where we're doing pretty well, 25% of beverages consumed is wine. It's almost saturated. It's 1% growth, 2% growth a year, and they consider it great growth.
So you have more opportunity to grow here.
Yes, it's very competitive to export. Having said that, about 5% of what we produce is exported, and it stayed consistent at that. This year, for example, our exports are booming. We're going to grow about 25 to 30% in exports over last year. The UK is one of our major markets, which makes a lot of sense because the national food of the UK is Indian food, right? It's curry. So curry, and you've got your Indian wine there. Yeah, but we also sell a lot of wine to Japan, to Germany, we're incredibly happy with the way that's going. But for us, the focus continues to be India.
On that note, we'll take a very short break and be right back with more on who the man behind the business tycoon Rajeev Samant really is.